During World War II, U-boat warfare was the major component of the Battle of the Atlantic, which began in 1939 and ended with Germany's surrender in 1945. British Prime Minister Winston Churchill later wrote, "The only thing that really frightened me during the war was the U-boat peril." Cross-Atlantic trade in war supplies and food was extensive and critical for Britain's survival. The continuous action surrounding Allied shipping became known as the Battle of the Atlantic. In order to prevent being detected either by acoustic or visual means, the German submarines had to employ a range of countermeasures to either thwart the penetrative gaze of radar and reduce the amount of time the individual U-boats spent on the surface to make it far more difficult for reconnaissance planes to discover their whereabouts. Unfortunately for the Germans, none of the main radar warning receivers they developed operated flawlessly against aircraft. Their own active radar sets, though effective, went into service tardily. What radar and sonar decoys they produced failed to achieve any lasting success. So, a new solution was needed. The technology of anechoic tiles was developed by the German Navy. They are rubber or synthetic polymer tiles containing thousands of tiny voids, applied to the outer hulls of military ships and submarines, as well as anechoic chambers. Their function is to absorb the sound waves of active sonar, reducing and distorting the return signal, thereby reducing its effective range. Manufactured by IG Farben as a specially formed synthetic rubber tile and made using a stabilized, non-polar, high molecular weight polyisobutylene homopolymer with low temperature elasticity, the rubber material itself was known by its trademark Opinol. The material was not homogeneous, but contained air cavities. These cavities resulted in a degraded reflection of sonar. The coating reduced echoes by 15%. However, this degradation in echo reflection was not uniform at all diving depths due to the voids being compressed by the water pressure. But an additional benefit of the coating was it acted as a sound dampener, containing the U-boat's own engine noises. The coating had its first sea trials in 1940. U-67, a Type 9 submarine, was the first operational U-boat with this coating. After its first war patrol, it put in at Wilhelmshaven probably sometime in April 1941, where it was given the coating. The coating covered the conning tower and sides of the U-boat, but not to the deck. By May 1941, U-67 was in Kiel performing tests in the Baltic Sea. During July, the coating was removed from all parts of the boat except the conning tower and bow. Further experiments and sound trials were made, but they presumably proved unsatisfactory, as all the coating was subsequently removed. Problems were encountered early on, when it was found that the adhesive had insufficient strength to bond synthetic rubber with the pressure hull and casing. This resulted in the sheets loosening and creating turbulence in the water, making it easier for the submarine to be detected. Furthermore, the coating was found to have considerably decreased the speed of the boat. It was not until late 1944 that the problems with the adhesive were mostly resolved. The coating required a special adhesive and careful application. It took several thousand hours of gluing and riveting on the U-boat. The first version was the Tarnmat. This was a radar-absorbing material used to coat snorkel heads to shield them from Allied radar. The retractable snorkel came into widespread use only in May 1944. It provided an air intake and exhaust for the diesels, so that boats could theoretically stay underwater 24 hours a day, not only charging batteries but cruising submerged on diesel power. However, not only was it difficult and even dangerous to operate, but its head above the surface could easily be detected by radar-equipped Allied aircraft. Tarnmat, the synthetic material used to coat the head 2 centimeters thick. Its thickness dictated the frequency of radar radiation that was absorbed. Despite claiming that Tarnmat could absorb 90% of the waves emitted by the Allied airborne Mark III radar sets, snorkel-equipped boats could be let down on occasion by the wake left by their mast on the surface of the sea or by a telltale cloud of diesel exhaust fumes that revealed their presence to the eyes of a trained aerial observer hunting for them. Next came the Alberich. Alberich, after the invisible guardian dwarf of the Rheingold treasure from Richard Wagner's music dramas. The coating consisted of sheets approximately 1 meter square and 4 millimeters thick, with rows of holes in two sizes, 4 mm and 2 mm in diameter. The first U-boat to test the new adhesive was U-480, a Type 7C U-boat. On August 25, 1944, U-480 under the command of Hans Joachim Forster made an attack on convoy BTC-78 off the English coast near Land's End. He sank 2 warships and 2 merchantmen. By this late in the war, very few boats would escape once detected by Allied surface ships, but although the escorts began a determined hunt, they had to give up after 7 hours, and the Alberich-treated U-boat escaped unscathed. Of course, it was not possible to determine to what degree her escape was due to the Alberich rather than simply to the skill of her commander. For his success, Forster was awarded the Knight's Cross on October 18, 1944. With good results with the new adhesive, the German Navy High Command ordered that in future all new Type 21 and Type 23 U-boats should be treated with the Alberich. Both were so-called electric U-boats, a submarine designed to operate entirely submerged, rather than as submersibles that could submerge as a temporary means to escape detection or launch an attack. Even before the Second World War, the rocket designer Helmuth Walter had been advocating the use of hydrogen peroxide as a fuel. His engines were to become famous for their use in rocket-powered aircraft, notably the Me-163 Comet, but most of his early efforts were spent on systems for submarine propulsion. However, only one operational Type 23 U-boat, the U-4709, was coated with the anechoic tiles. But she was scuttled before undertaking any combat patrols. After the war, the technology was not used again until the late 1960s, when the Soviet Union began coating its submarines, starting with the Victor class, in rubber tiles. These were initially prone to falling off, but as the technology matured, it was apparent that the tiles were having a dramatic effect in reducing the submarine's acoustic signatures. Modern Russian tiles are about 100 mm thick, and apparently reduced the acoustic signature of Akula-class submarines by between 10 and 20 decibels. Modern materials consist of a number of layers and many different sized voids, each targeted at a specific sound frequency range at different depths. Different materials are sometimes used in different areas of the submarine to better absorb specific frequencies associated with machinery at that location inside the hull. The Royal Navy started using anechoic tiles in 1980, when HMS Triumph was fitted with them during its second refit. The United States Navy also started using anechoic tiles in 1980s. In recent years, nearly all modern military submarines are designed to use anechoic tiles, which were developed in Germany during the early 1940s. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and to make sure you don't miss my future work, please make sure you are subscribed to my channel and press the bell notification button. Thank you, and see you in the next video.